Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Sri Kaza. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me, Robert.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business experiences?
Sure. It's kind of had a wide range of experiences. A big portion of my time was at McKinsey. I was 10 years at McKinsey, and I left there and for the most part, I think 15 years of my career is spent with Fortune 500s, working on big problems, making profitable decisions or profitable companies be even more profitable. And after I left McKinsey, I shifted into entrepreneurship, either with companies that were private equity backed where I had an entrepreneurial role or even started my own business. And in those roles, I focused on small businesses and helping with small businesses. Three different roles in total, working with small businesses. One was helping them optimize tax credits. Another one was helping them with the hiring funnel. It was a talent analytics program. And then finally, lending, small business lending. And so in all three of those, I really learned about how small business owners operate and a lot of the challenges they face. And I personally learned how to look at the world from their perspective. And that was very eye-opening for me. And it's given me an opportunity to go share, hey, this is what I learned at McKinsey. And it turns out it might apply, but you gotta use it very differently to make it work for your business.
Quick question. You said you work for big businesses and you help them with profit. Do a lot of big businesses struggle with profit too? Because I know small ones do.
Well, wonderful question. Yeah, I think it's about expectation. And every big business struggles with expectation. So yes, they may be producing profit, but when I go into some business, they've been producing a certain amount of profit or expecting to produce a certain amount of profit. And whoever owns the stock at the moment bought that stock because they thought there's going to be more profit and more growth. And yeah, it's a struggle. Like third party looking at these companies trying to squeeze money out of things that like, hey, you've already made enough off of this. What most people don't realize or sympathize with, nor should they realize or sympathize with, is that last investor in is sitting there saying, wait, I gave you money and you're not giving me back what it's worth. So when you put yourself in the seat of the CEO, there's a lot of pressure on him to deliver something that's greater than what he was delivering last week. Every single week, every single quarter, there's that pressure.
The never-ending game of more.
Exactly right. Right.
So what were the eye-opening things you saw when you started working with small businesses and the way they look at things?
Well, one of the first things that I realized was the small businesses just don't have the luxury of time and resources to solve their problems. And, one of my favorite sayings about a small business owner is not only are they the CEO of their business, they're also the head of HR, they're also the head of marketing, and they're also the janitor. All these different roles, there's just not people around to go and pick them up. So they've got to do all of them. And that makes them vulnerable to getting busy with things that are low value. That makes them vulnerable to ignoring problems that are difficult to solve. And that makes them kind of low capacity to take on new and exciting growth vectors in the company. So when I was working closely with my sales teams in different contexts, one of the first things I had to go and realize myself and then help them kind of get around to it is you have to take the perspective of the owner when you're having that conversation. You have to think about the problems from their viewpoint first and foremost. And to me, it was pretty eye-opening because as a McKinsey consultant, I was a luxury to that CEO who brought us in to go solve a problem. He already knew what he wanted, he had a budget for it. He's going to come in and get somebody who can solve that problem and take care of it for him. And here, small business owners can't afford any of those luxuries. They got to solve it themselves. And what we found, if you're not working closely with them, what you'd find is that they're not going to even bother solving the problem. They're going to ignore it.
Yeah, they ignore the financial one a lot, which is why they get into more trouble.
That's right. That's right. So I ended up in the lending business. Is you listen to their problems all the time. You're like, okay, if you just got well-placed investments, right? Invest in your business in the right way, you could be off and running and escape a lot of the problems that you're on. A lot of times it's not even something people are considering. It's like, oh no, I don't want to go take on debt. I don't want to go and take up more work to solve that because I think I'm going to dig my way out of this hole. And, that's just, it hurts to hear it. But hopefully if you listen to the individual and you talk to them about what they're really trying to accomplish, you help them see that there's a path. If there's a path.
The only way to dig yourself out of a hole is to end up at the other side of the planet. And that takes a crap ton of work.
That's right.
It's a lot easier to climb your way out of the hole. And if you got a ladder, it's even easier.
Yeah,
And
I
if
would
you've
tell I
got
would tell a
a
friend like
little lift,
right? Like you got to explain to like one of my openers that say, hey, look, you find this guy in a hole, and he's telling you he's too busy digging to listen to your, hey, I've got a ladder for you. Like I've got this ladder, I'm over here. You know, it's going to cost a couple of bucks, but like take it, you'll be out of the hole. And they're just too busy digging because they think they're going to get to China before they have to go spend the $2 on the ladder. And it's tough because if you look at it from their perspective, they think they have a solution, they think they've got it under control, but just look up and you'll see you're going in the wrong direction.
it's very true. So you wrote the book Unconventional. Let's talk a little bit about that. There's a lot of good principles in there. One of them was the underdog principle. So can you explain what that was?
Yeah, sure. When I got into writing this, I had a very different opinion on who should survive and who shouldn't when I looked at small businesses. It was if you're following discipline practices, you're making the right strategic choices, if you're pricing at your full value, you should be successful and resilient. And businesses that don't seem to stick with the pure economics really would be the ones that struggle. And I don't know that's totally wrong. So I don't want to say, hey, look, ignore strategy. What I want to say is I saw resilience in businesses that clung to, I'm an underdog and I need to stick to why I believe in myself. And in some cases, it didn't make sense to me until I really saw with my own eyes what these businesses were doing. But those three principles under the underdog principles are the principles of positioning, proximity, and purpose. So when I talk about positioning, some people will tell you, look, if you focus only on a subset of your customers and you don't try to please everybody, you're not going to grow, you're not going to go have a thriving business. The positioning principle here is know who you serve them well. It's okay to piss off the customers that don't come to your store, don't use your service. Focus on the ones who you can really have an impact. It's not what you see with a lot of these guys, like those CEOs who are constantly under pressure. You see them chasing every last customer because they have to. A small business doesn't have to. In fact, a small business has the luxury of focus and putting their attention on the customer they care about. You see this then materialize in loyal customers. Customers who say, wow, what this one business offers me, I can't get anywhere else. There's nobody like this one business. But it may not be the entire country or the entire state or even the entire town that business is in. But it's a set of customers who say this business is critical and important. So I'm going to support them when they're in trouble. The next principle is proximity. Here, what we're talking about is not just being close to your customers and knowing what they care about, but that proximity to your customers is an advantage that you have in every decision that you make. Go back to that CEO. He's got to get a survey from marketing. Somebody's got to write that survey, generate the data, bring it up to him. 2 months after somebody thought about what the questions should be, he's got answers to a whole bunch of questions that are like multiple choice answers. And now he'll know a little bit, some hard data about what customers will do if they're asked the right question. The CEO and head of marketing and customer care rep, who is the small business owner, all in one, has that closeness and understanding of his customer in his head. That customer needs to be consulted on decisions. How does it affect my customer? How does it change their experience? So businesses that think about their customer in their decision making, especially the business owners who do that, they demonstrate real resilience and loyalty. So you have customers now who expect that the business is going to serve their needs. And the business thinks about their needs when they make their changes. It really matters when there's turbulence on the horizon and changes need to be put in place. If you're thinking about your customers, you can make those changes faster than any big business because you already know the answer to the survey. Come up with the questions. All right, and the final principle in the underdog principles is purpose. Purpose is in addition to profit. I don't want to suggest that businesses should be run without profit in mind. Businesses are for-profit institutions. Even the nonprofit is just a tax status. You do need to run the business if there's margins there. But purpose is what you need to get through the tough times. Purpose is what you need to align people behind you when you're still not achieving what you want to achieve as a business. You're in it for more than just dollars. I'll tell any small business owner that, maybe you're not trying to save the world, but if you're trying to take care of your family, you're trying to be your own boss, that's good enough as a purpose. Be aware of that purpose be conscious of the purpose that you serve when you make your decisions. It gives you the freedom to trade off profit versus purpose. And those trade-offs can be pretty powerful. I know a number of small business owners who will chase a lot of different things to a point where they get to exhaustion, when it was never their intent to spend half of their time away from their family. It was their intent to take care of them. So think about what you're doing with your time, and think about what you're doing, where you're taking your business, and use that. Because those three principles, when you see people, incorporate that into their thinking, into their decision making, you end up with much more resilient businesses that can handle shock or challenges.
And I think of this as the part where we talk about working on your business instead of in your business. And when you have let's call it a guiding light or a North Star, those principles, decision making becomes easier, right? A lot of other things just happen because of that. And if you're really good at it and your purpose is beyond just giving yourself a little freedom and some money, which not bad. If you've got a bigger purpose, though, you will attract the right kinds of employees too, because people want to be part of that bigger purpose as well. And that's kind of changing generationally. You're hearing that much more. People want to have, let's call it, meaningful jobs. And it's that they're doing something meaningful in what they're delivering.
You want that purpose kind of not on some piece of paper or on a corporate memo. You want it kind of in how you live your business. And your employees will pick that up, right? It's called role modeling. Like, you think the purpose is you want to introduce a particular cuisine into the neighborhood or into the world, and you're passionate about it, you love it, and you think it's fantastic. Guess what? You're only going to have employees, one way or another, you're only going to have employees who agree with you, right? Your employees will feel your passion for it. And then if they appreciate that passion because they also love the food, they'll bring that same love to the customers, right? Carry on your mission because they want to be part.
And if there's a cook who also happens to like that kind of cuisine, he's going to say, I want to work over there because then I get to make what I love and I get to play and I get to try new things. And so it creates that. Money is one of the big problems that businesses have. The second one, and I don't know which one is ahead, is people. If I could just get people to do what I want, it would be easy. What you talk about is finding people who have skills and then build a job around them. And I'm going to struggle with this one a little because, yes, they need to have skills. And yes, I agree with building a job around them. But I also want to make sure they fit and they have the values and the culture that you espouse as well. Because if they don't, we call people with lots of skill and no good cultural fit terrorists because they hold you hostage. So I just want to bring that out, but let's talk about that concept.
Yeah, it's it was one of the case studies I learned. I think it's called job fitting or job crafting. I think is the term. It was one of the case studies I had with a bookstore owner. He went on a level that I think is a bit extreme for most of your listeners, but I think it's a really good example of job crafting. His bookstore wasn't just for selling books. He had a purpose of supporting the autistic community. One of the things that he wanted to commit to was he was going to hire individuals with severe autism and train them to do something in his bookstore. And that's where he learned the job crafting technique. Is you go say, hey, look, this person, maybe they're not great at talking, or maybe they're not great at organizing books, but I'm going to find something that they're passionate about, that they like, and then I'll figure out the job that I can get them in. We'll flex wherever we can flex, but I want people on the same mission. So he put, as you just put it, cultural fit and mission first, and found ways to make it work. Of course, he had other talents that he was able to bring in who loved the mission, were willing to work with and work with him on the mission, but then also could fit whatever they could do. Anytime he found somebody who did feel mission oriented, he'd then go look for that next job. So he was telling me about social media coordinator or greeter type of role in the store, a number of different roles that he could figure out how to make work because they bought in on the mission. But does that make sense for everybody? And sometimes people are sitting there saying, well, look, I could do that, but I have a 4-hour-a-week job for somebody. So no, it's not going to work. You do have to go think about values and fit first. But you can also start to think about your platform as something that one of the things you're contributing is a stable job to the local economy. I'm creating an opportunity for young people if you're looking at hiring in young and letting them kind of graduate something else, skill development. But you will want to go in and factor in how you're building your team, what you're giving them back, what opportunities you're creating for them as part of your mission. Because it's not always about just yourself. As most business owners know, they've got, it's a lot of work to keep your employees happy and keep them busy and productive.
That it is. You have to figure out what works for you. But I think you have to look bigger than just skills and again, crafting the job. Like we talk about right people, right seat. And so sometimes the person just might be in the wrong seat. And so
Yep.
that's where you're finding the job that better fits the person because you do like them for the other reasons.
Yeah. I mean, coming from the big business perspective, you design the seat, you get the seat exactly right. And then you just hire people that fit the seat and don't hire anybody who doesn't, and pay enough that if somebody's in the seat, they're happy. That doesn't work for small business. You just can't. And then, you asked about, where the biggest challenge is. I mean, recruiting is getting harder and harder and harder. And it's odd because, one of the businesses I founded was around talent acquisition and creating tools that kind of democratize things for small businesses. But I think what's happened is it's almost gotten a little bit perverted by the users, the employers that are out there harvesting tons and tons of resumes, harvesting clicks, and then offering jobs to 1 to 2 out of thousands that go through the application process. So what they're doing is they're creating ghosts of candidates, and creating expectations within job applicants that there's nobody interested in their talent or their talent. And so now if you're a small business who go through one of these big platforms, half of the people that you like ghost you because they're like, they're either taken already by somebody else or they don't even think you're real because everybody else isn't real. And then the people who are applying actually don't apply nearly to as many of the smaller businesses because there's no data or history and they're not getting matched very well. I hate to say, I think it's time for people to start to go back to some more traditional means of recruitment, but I think folks I've talked to who struggle with using big platforms say, okay, I can't get people who will stick around or I can't find this. They may want to go back to the original, hey, who's in your network? Who do you know? Who are people? Who are your friends? Or who are your suppliers or vendors? And go work through channels that personal trust goes a long way, especially when everything's become digital.
It does. And today, those digital platforms have gotten extremely expensive. So it's, they are stretched for dollars. And if you don't have to pay because you used relationships, hey, that's a smarter way to do it.
Yeah.
One of the other things you talk about in the book is the MUD technique, meaningful, unique, and defensible. So what does that apply to?
So in kind of big corporate consulting, when you're looking to test somebody's differentiation, are you different? There's a lot of ways to be different, but if it doesn't pass the MUD test, it's not going to create value as a company. So this MUD test is you ask now, your differentiation, is it meaningful to people? Is it meaningful to your customers? Usually in a big corporate setting, you can actually go and evaluate the cost. You can evaluate what's the value to the customer. You come up with, yes, my differentiation has actual value to my customers. In a small business setting, when you think about how you're different, you have a broad scope of ways to be different. I often point out that any small business with a retail location, their location itself is a source of differentiation. How meaningful is it is a different question. How does it differentiate you from your competitors? If you've got competitors right across the street and your retail location, then it's not very meaningful. If you're the only one on that corner or only one on that side of town, now all of a sudden it becomes meaningful, right? Because you're close to your customers. Uniqueness on the same side of the coin is if there are others out there who can do the same thing. You may have something meaningful, but if 3 other guys can do that same meaningful thing, you are not going to be able to price for it. Your value is really how much different you are from your nearest neighbor. And then defensible is an interesting one. And it's the one where with big companies, you think about this big moat and like, oh, I've got this big pile of data where I've got all these established customers and nobody else can get them. With the smaller businesses, it's a similar concept, but now because your market, the market that you're meaningful for and unique to is small, the amount of investment it would take to come in and get them might be small, but it's still not worth the amount of customers that you already have. So you will be differentiated because it's the incentive for a large corporation to come after you just isn't there. So a simple example, take two concrete mixers, one concrete mixer on the west side of town, another concrete mixer on the east side of town. They're all serving the construction on the east side or the west side respectively. And the differentiation is quite strong and quite meaningful. It's strong because they're the only ones within 10 miles of the construction sites on the west side. And it's meaningful because the time and the cost to go get that concrete, drive it out, rent the truck, pay the driver, pay for gas is significant. You won't go to the east side of town if your construction is on the west side of town. You won't go the other way. But is it defensible? Well, I guess somebody else could open up another concrete place right next to you or in your area. But given your scope and your size, if you have the spot, you've been established, you have the existing customers, and you serve them well, it's very expensive for somebody else to come in and take that business away from you. And it won't be worth the margins that you're making today on the business that you're in. But I ask everyone to go think about their differentiation because that's the element that's central to most of the rest of your business. And loyalty, it's the center to loyalty, it's the center to your customer relationships, it's a center to your pricing. And if you can establish and be clear to yourself about what your positioning is, what that differentiation is, be confident in that it's defensible. That gives you the option to go do a lot of the other things that will drive.
A lot of times what I find is what they come up for these characteristics are boring. Like, it's like, so what? In other words, they all say the same exact thing. And
Yep.
so it's not differentiated. It's
It's not
not
meaningful.
unique
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
not meaningful.
Yeah.
And so I think you really have to think about this and be clear about it, but not just say what everybody else is saying because I think that happens a lot.
Oh, it does. I used flavor as an example earlier about positioning because flavor is unique, right? And the owner's personality, when it's done well, actually may come out as a flavor. But you can't decide that for yourself, saying I have a flavor. You've got to be able to talk to your own customers and ask sometimes a tough question: why'd you pick me over the other guy? Right? You got to know. And honestly, in most of the work I've done, what people hear is, well, I was the first one, or I was the one that was the most convenient, I was the easiest one to work with. And you know what? That's not terrible. If your differentiation is you're the easiest one to find, you were the one in the neighborhood, that's great. Embrace it.
But speaking to that, and I think a lot of small businesses don't realize this, if somebody needs something and they start picking up the phone and making phone calls, the person who actually answers the phone and talks to them quickest, that speed is a differentiator. If
Oh my goodness.
everyone else is taking a message or not answering the phone, you win.
Oh
And
my
so,
gosh. Right?
yes.
If you think about it from that customer journey perspective, they got 4 phone numbers. They call the first one, they call the second one, and if the second one answers, they're not bothering with 3 anymore, right?
No.
Yeah.
And number one lost out. So, I think a lot of times small business owners feel defeated. But yet you talk in the book how small business owners can beat big. So how does small beat big?
Okay. So let's go back to our CEO who is, he's getting paid a lot. So pretend you don't know how much he's getting paid. He's getting beat up constantly. He's got a million different stakeholders to worry about. He's got the board, he's got his employees, he's got activist shareholders, he's got customers and vendors. And the small business will feel beat up because they've got the same issues. But at the end of the day, they're the business owner. They get to decide what success is. And when you go back and you remind yourself of your purpose, what you're trying to accomplish, and the people that you touch, what you have are relationships, and you have a purpose that you're accomplishing that's your own. That's not the case for the big businesses. They're out there chasing after something that everybody else wants them to chase. You have the independence then to win because you get to set what winning is. And I look at these underdog small businesses who are out there trying to prove other people wrong because I don't know how many small businesses I talk to who say, well, I was doubted, right? Everybody around me didn't think it could work or thought it was a bad idea. To go out and just be able to prove that wrong is a win to begin with. And then looking at it from the perspective of overcoming the odds and winning when when the odds are stacked against you. That lets you beat big. But what really lets you beat big is those three principles that the small guys have, the big guys don't. It lets you have a meaningful impact on the lives of your customers and relationships with your customers that corporations never have. And then fulfilling a purpose that you get to dictate is the purpose of the business.
And that's true. I think small companies have that nimble ability to pivot, to answer quickly, to move quickly, and to make choices that a big business just takes too long to do. And so if you have to compete against a big business, figure out what your strengths are to win against and go position yourself there. It's winnable. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. Or you could go after a segment of clients that they don't want because it's just not in their particular space.
Right.
And
That's
so
right.
you can go win over there left and right.
Yep.
It's up to you. Or you offer something a little bit different that people want that they don't. And that's okay too. But I think that the key is to think about, how do I win at this game? Small businesses consistently over time displace big businesses, right? That's
Yep.
just the way it is. And then they
There's a
become
lot of
big
blind spots.
businesses.
Yeah, there's a lot
And then
of
they
blind
get
spots.
displaced.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right.
So one of the things that people really don't necessarily value, and we don't put a dollar on, and is extremely hard to measure, is trust. And yet it can cost a fortune, and it can cause you lost business. It can cause you premium pricing because people trust you. And the same thing for your employees and everybody else. Having a high trust environment where, if you've got a group of people and so is supposed to do something and they're going to do it, then people are more into rowing the boat the same direction. What have you found?
So, in my book, I explore a lot of my favorite frameworks on how to think about business. They apply to everybody. They apply to big businesses and small. One of those frameworks is created by David Meister. It's called the trust equation. I'm a math person. I was an engineer by trade. I hope I don't turn off people by putting something as ambiguous in trust into an equation, but it really helped me think about trust for me. And it's really helpful for small business owners who have a lot of challenges in kind of creating a business and having the credibility to sell their services. So the trust equation, to keep it simple, is three variables on top of the equation and one variable at the bottom of the denominator. So the three variables at the top are credibility, reliability, and intimacy. And you multiply them all against each other. So let's say they're from a scale of 0 to 1. So if you're like 100% credible, 100% reliable, and there's 100% kind of intimacy, then the top of your equation is 1, and then at the bottom is self-interest. So self-interest means, how much are you concerned about yourself versus concerned about your customer or whoever it is you're working with. I tell my sales guys the term is commission breath. If the person you're dealing with can smell that all you care about is your commission, you're not getting the sale. So, so this equation, what does it really mean? The credibility is, do you know what you're talking about? Ability is, are you consistent? Do you show up? Do you deliver the promises that you make? Intimacy is a unique one that most of the people who, when I share this equation with, don't realize what that means and that it's really an important part of trust. But intimacy means I feel like I know you. I feel like I understand you. I feel like I can connect with you. A lot of times, good salespeople, I use sales as an example because they build trust when they do their sales. It's just a matter of, hey, we're from the same town, or we both enjoy the same sports team. It could be a number of things. Very low denominator intimacy. Oh yeah, no, he's the same kind of person as me because we both like the Yankees. That's a thing. Intimacy is knowing that person is a real person. And then at the bottom, like I mentioned, self-interest. If somebody knows you're worried about yourself and you're not worried about their problem, it's impossible to build. So what I see most common in small business owners trying to go build up their business and trying to be successful, they're really worried about their credibility. They're really worried about the reliability. They're putting a lot of time and energy to puff up and show that they can be credible, show that they can be reliable. It's a lot of work put in there. And that's great. And it's important. And they're very, very important pieces of building trust. But if you ignore that intimacy piece, or worse, you hide the intimacy piece to increase or improve your credibility, you actually are going to damage that trust building. So just a simple example comes personally from my career as a McKinsey consultant. People think that you know what you're talking about. People think you know all this has all the expertise. But in reality, every time you get to a point where you're talking to a CEO or an executive trying to sell them some very expensive consulting services, the doubts still pop in their head, right? And in my learning and trying to get work sold and getting people to trust me that I can solve their problem, I put a lot of energy into explaining why I knew their business really well, why I had all of this experience, why I was smart enough to solve their new problem or something different. And it really came down on me in one scenario where I kind of just annoyed the client I was working with by talking about how much I knew as opposed to thinking about their perspective and more importantly, recognizing that they didn't see me as an equal or somebody that was similar. They saw me as some Ivy League educated, arrogant snob trying to tell them they didn't know anything. And it can work against you when you're working too hard to be credible or reliable to forget about that human connection. And, you know, for me personally, that was a big learning and work that I've had to do is recognize that, you know what, they'd rather just deal with a person than deal with a robot. And that's why I use this equation a lot when I talk about how do you build trust. Your customers, your clients, or your employees, if you act like you're great because you think that's what they want, you don't act like you're a human who could bleed or who could have challenges or could have issues, that trust isn't going to be there. You've got to actually be open. You've got to let them know that you're vulnerable too. And that actually is a big element of building and leveraging trust in your relationships.
And that's a big part of it. And I think people don't realize how much it costs because there's no line on the P&L that says trust. There's no number anywhere, but it is tremendous. And you just have to be aware of it and take action and stay on top of it. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in trouble with it.
Yeah, I recommend everybody think about this and say, hey, do I have that trust? And what are those pieces that I'm missing, right? Where have I invested? What am I trying to do? And what am I not investing?
That is very, very true. If people would like to get a copy of the book, how do they go about doing that?
Available in bookstores. It's on Amazon. Also, if you want to support small businesses, you can go to bookshop.org and you can buy it on bookshop.org. There, they'll ask you to pick your local bookstore that you want to support, and that local bookstore will be credited sale instead of Amazon. So, you know, if you're an Amazon subscriber, you got Prime and all that stuff, great. I'm not saying don't go to Amazon, but if you want to support small businesses, Bookshop's great. You can go to my website to get the links to that. My website is just Sri Kaza.
And we'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Rodney.
Hey, thanks for listening to the entire unedited video of the Profit Answer Man podcast. You can actually get the full podcast in audio only format here on YouTube or any other of your favorite podcast players. Don't forget to go check out episodes 1 through 13. They lay out the foundation of Profit First in the book and how to get started. In addition, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to check out. And if you remember to subscribe, you'll always be updated when we put a new one out every single week. Thanks for listening. Have a profitable week.